Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Seed Talk with Lisa and Layne. Hey Layne.
Hello. Hey, everybody.
So friends, just another little tidbit drop. Did you know that Layne and I have a new course out? And if you haven't checked it out, you are missing a gem. It's called Cool Flowers Seed to Harvest. And it is a spectacular course. I didn't tell you this, Layne. The other day on a live, I forget where I was live, somebody chimed in and said that they absolutely love that course. That
Oh,
it was
wow. How
helping
nice.
them so much with their harvesting right now.
Oh, good. Oh,
You
that's
know,
so good to hear.
so I mean, having the app in your back pocket and being able to pull it up and go to that flower and go right to where the harvest is. I mean, anyway. So friends, you'll find that over at thegardenersworkshop.com, who is actually bringing and making this podcast possible. So we have a lot of great stuff over there, and that is just one of our latest and greatest. And Layne did an amazing job. Just it's mostly video, and Harach, her husband, was our film man. He was our cameraman and did
He
such a great
was.
job. He was, and he was a good
He
sport
was.
too.
One time I remember he had a mosquito actively biting his hand and he did not want to have to pause. So he just stood there stoically and just let it bite him as
And
we
took it.
filmed
I
a
was
harvesting
gonna
demo.
say he even just with bugs, sir, because y'all we do this early
Yeah.
in the morning. I
Yeah.
mean, it's hot and sticky, and bugs are just buzzing around your head anyway. So it's really a work of art, and in spite of bugs and mosquitoes, and
Yes.
we would love for you to check that out. All
Yes.
right, Layne, what are we talking about today?
Well, today we're going to be talking about three plants that we want to encourage you to try planting this summer. We treat them as warm season tender annuals, and what makes them unique is that they are actually vining plants and also that they're not typically grown for the flowers. They're grown either for their interesting seed pods or for the fruit. So we'll be going through three that we would like to encourage you to try.
Awesome. And does this mean we're going to talk about my tunnel?
It does.
Ugh, I love that thing. I love it. I mean, you just don't know how many times a day Tucker and I walk through that thing. It is
Yeah.
just so fun.
Okay, so Lisa, before we get started talking about the three particular plants that we're going to be talking about, I thought we could talk about some options for trellising or structures to actually grow vining plants on because they can be surprisingly vigorous. Some of them can be heavy and they need a strong supportive structure. So, what are some different options for things for vining plants to grow on?
Sure, because I have grown so many vines and had them collapse for the reasons that you just mentioned, as well as they just get heavy. Particularly
Yeah.
one of them is particularly heavy because of the vines and all the foliage. And so we've grown in several different ways, those cute little trellises and all different kinds of little they have I don't know how to say the French name. What are they called?
Tutors or
Yes,
something?
yes. And they're beautiful actually to not grow things on in your garden so you can actually see the structure. That is not what we're talking about. They don't even come close to providing the support that these guys will need. So what we've come to know and love, and is very affordable, and even two girls with a hammer and some strong stakes and some cable ties were able to create an amazing 50-foot long tunnel, or you could just make it 4 foot.
Yeah.
And it's really, really affordable. And we made our tunnel out of they're called livestock panels. And it's a rigid fence panel, which is about 4 foot tall and 16 feet long. I'm pretty sure they come shorter, but you don't want them much shorter because you want them to be tall enough to walk under. And literally, we would pound nice, strong stakes into the ground about 5 feet, maybe 6 feet apart, and then just flex that rigid panel and pin it. You can, if you're looking at the image over here in YouTube, which I recommend if you're listening on a podcast app to head over to our YouTube channel to see that. That front 4 feet of this tunnel is like one panel. And literally, Suzanne and I carried the panel over there and we just popped it in between the posts and then we cable tied it. And that, friends, I mean, we built that 50-foot tunnel probably in 2 hours.
Oh,
And it's been
wow.
up for several years now, and it just does a really great job. And we grow some pretty vigorous stuff on it, as well as vegetables and just a great mix of things. It's so fun, and it is so fun for children. And let me just add, but so I don't forget to say it, if you have trick-or-treaters where you are, this is a great place in late October where a lot of times a lot of it is died down and turned brown to put your candy and giving it out at the end of this and decorate it. And
Ooh,
it's
I
kind of
love
it's
that.
a fun, spooky place for kids to go. They'll never leave, basically.
Yeah, because the vines that we're going to talk about today, they really grow and completely envelop this tunnel. It's like a tunnel
Yes.
made out of vines, is what it looks like.
And yes, I mean, and they decorate it naturally. And in fact, one of them looks just like bats hanging from
Oh,
the roof. I mean, it is, I was so, we don't have trick-or-treaters hardly at all anymore. We used to have a pack, and I thought, you know what, I would do it this year because it was so amazing.
would you like Harach and I to show up and we'll trick or treat so someone can
Yeah,
make
that
use
would
of
be
your tunnel?
fun.
Lisa, what would you say to someone that is wanting to use netting in a vertical installation for some of the vines that we're going to be talking about today?
You mean like the plastic netting, like what we grow
Right.
sweet peas on? Netting is super strong, but its weak link is the stakes. You have to have incredibly, I would only use metal, like heavy duty T-posts, 6 to 8 feet at least, pounded deeply into the ground and it installed properly. It's a possibility, but I will tell you that is a mess to take because that doesn't typically last from year to year. The plastic netting left installed. So you have to just tear the whole thing down and throw it away, and that's such a waste. And so we really like permanent metal uses so you can pull the vinings off if you need to. It's much easier. It's not easy at all, but it's easier on a heavy duty hardware.
And like you mentioned, you don't have to make it super long. You could even just form the metal into an arch.
Right, right. So we have used these and so where do you find these livestock panels? Farm supply places, the big box stores, I haven't ever found them. But I mean, I don't want to say brand names, but some of these bigger supply stores, you can just search engine it online. And because they're 16 feet long, they're kind of a delivery issue. You know, the average, you can't fit that in a pickup truck. So many of them have a delivery service, so you can actually get them delivered, and it's worth the delivery fee, trust me, and to have them, delivered right to your doorstep.
We're not going to be talking about vegetables today, but what are some vegetables that you've grown on these panels,
Oh,
Lisa?
sure. The very first tunnel I ever made out of these, I grew cantaloupes. I did tend to grow the smaller ones, cantaloupes, cucumbers, and I have a friend that grows all of her tomatoes on one of these. And because she
Wow.
has such serious deer pressure, she actually can grow them and they vine across the top, and the deer can't really reach the tomatoes on the top, and they just spray the bottom just to keep the foliage kind of intact. So yeah, I mean, you have to grow indeterminate tomatoes, and it really, really works beautifully. We've actually started this year. We have a vining zucchini. I've grown
Ooh.
squash, different, like acorn squash and butternut squash and all of those. So yeah, there's lots of stuff that that's a vine, but then think of tomatoes are actually a vine.
So think beyond just ornamental. There are other things you can grow on
Oh
a
yeah.
tunnel like this too.
Yeah. And for sure, cucumbers. And we love incorporating the flower. I mean, vegetables do love flowers, right, y'all? I mean,
Yes.
we incorporate them all together, I mean, randomly throughout. It's fun.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to the actual plants we're featuring today. And I should also mention that if you are just listening, like Lisa mentioned, you can hop over to YouTube and take a look at the images. I've tried to include an image of each of these actually growing on the tunnel we talked about, as well as the finished product, the actual cut stems or the fruits. So our first plant is going to be Hyacinth Bean, and this is one that has just continuous color.
Yep.
It has these really pretty green leaves, but they almost have a little bit of a purpley undertone, and then the stems are purple, and it has these really pretty sweet pea-like blooms that come that are very short-lived. And then what we're mostly after with these are these gorgeous magenta purple pods. Can you talk about Hyacinth Bean, Lisa?
Yes, I first met this. I grew it as an ornamental because I mean, bumblebees adore this vine, which, that's a native pollinator. And but when I saw these beans that came afterwards, which are in fact edible, I'll tell you the biggest surprise and disappointment. So I grew a bunch of it because I was always a big canner back in years and years ago. I would can vegetables. I thought, how beautiful would those beans be in a jar, right? I mean, think purple beans in a jar,
Yes.
on a shelf, it'd be beautiful. Well, they turn green when you process them, just to give anybody a heads up. So, I absolutely love this vine. I tend to call it Jack and the Beanstalk because literally the vine grows like, that was one of our favorite stories growing up. And that's what I just imagined. And they have those blooms that you mentioned that are very short lived, that would be great for an event, but you would never put them in a bouquet. But it's these pods, bean pods that follow. These are so spectacular for fall tables, fall wreaths, fall arrangements, bouquets. I mean, they're just really, really significant. And you can see how long those stems are. They're very useful, and you can just lay them on tables. And because the stem's beautiful too, I mean, it's a really useful ornamental.
And our favorite variety for these is Ruby Moon. How do you space the plants along each side of your tunnel structure?
So we're just getting ready to plant ours. I've got, I think, 16 plants downstairs that are just beautiful. And we'll probably, I mean, we'll put them 12 inches apart, and we'll do it on both sides as far up as we can go, which will probably not be, but less than a third of that tunnel. And if you could space them as far as 24 inches apart, depends on how fast you want them to cover. We want cover quick. We want it to fill out for
Yeah.
imaging and all that kind of stuff. And then it starts to bloom midsummer.
Lisa, could you give some tips about harvesting these beautiful hyacinth bean pods?
Sure. So we do, so the beans. We typically, the beans are ready later in the summer, and that's the perfect time when we need them. We use them in bouquets as well when they're really long. And you just cut them when the beans are developed as much as you want them. And as you can almost tell from this image, they're deeper purple and larger on the bottom, and then at the top, they're smaller. That's just how they naturally grow. And so we just condition them like we normally do anything else into a harvest bucket. And they have a fairly good base life. We don't really pull the vines off of this, and it's mainly because this is a huge home base to all of our birds. They love it in the fall, and then as it dies, because it does definitely winter kill. It's not a strong reseeder for us. We'll get a few reseeders, but not much at all. But this is just a really great place for birds are in there shopping for insects all the time. So we don't remove that. We don't tidy that up at all because it's on that strong structure, and we're not really worried about it collapsing it.
Okay, now we're going to move on to Love in a Puff. And this is one that has really tiny, white, insignificant flowers, but then following the flowers, these beautiful seed pods develop that always remind me of paper lanterns. And they kind of look like that papery husk on a tomatillo, if you've ever seen that. And they have a magical fairy quality to them. Wouldn't you say, Lisa?
Yes, and let me just say that growing these on a tunnel and then walking through it when all those little green balls are dangling, and
Oh,
I mean, it is magical. There's just no
it
other
is.
way to do it to even I tend to plant this at the head of the tunnel because it's
Oh,
just it's just really, really sweet. And so as you mentioned, there's an insignificant flower. And we love to use these, and interestingly enough, the vines, which can be harvested, to use as a cut. I mean, these are beautiful for event work, and even in bouquets, we cut a vine and hydrate it, strip the bottom half just like you would a cut flower, right? And they do really, really well. The challenge is they're very branchy. They grow lots of vines per plant. And if you want to try to use them as cut flowers, you really need to train them to grow straight up, and you have to prune constantly. You have to constantly cut, or they're a tangled mess. And when you're untangling them, you pop the pods off. And so the way I met them, they weren't this lime green. They were actually further down their journey. They were copper colored because they were
yeah.
aged out, and they're beautiful then too, but the green is my favorite.
How do you see them being used in the floral industry? What applications have you seen people using these in?
Oh, sure. Chandeliers, and people, they would need a water tube. I mean, and you could remove the foliage and probably not even need to hydrate, keep them hydrated. But yeah, we've seen them on chandeliers, candelabras, laying on tables. So you can actually put the end of this vine in a little container with water and then just lay the vine out on the table. It is absolutely spectacular. I think last year we did a test. I think we got one of these to stay hydrated for like 19 days or something
Oh,
indoors.
wow.
So they're really easy to hydrate, which I assumed they would not be. They just appeared too delicate to
Yeah,
do
they
that.
look really delicate,
Yeah.
but they're actually quite tough. And
And
also
they're
the
strong reseeders.
That's what I was just gonna say. I was gonna say their little seeds are so cute because they're dark round seeds, and then there's a little white heart that's stamped on them that's just always fun to look at as you're sowing the seeds. And like Lisa said, they are such strong reseeders. So just be aware of that if you don't want them to reseed.
Right. And so if you don't want them to reseed, that just means you need to cut all the vines before they pop. And I don't know if this seed is poisonous or not, but what a fun little thing would be to have little kids come and pick the aged out pods and pop
Oh,
them open and see the hearts. But you always
yeah.
have to worry about them eating them. But I mean, that would really be a fun, I'm just thinking that right now out loud, that would have been a really fun little thing to do for like a kindergarten class or something.
So Lisa, thinning the stems, like you mentioned, that is really important to prevent everything from becoming a tangled mess and to make sure you keep the pods on the vines when you go to take them off.
Yes. So if you're growing it as an ornamental, you don't have to really do this. You just, let them go up,
Right.
right, and over and do their thing. But if you're growing it as a cut flower, it's going to take some heavy pruning. We actually grew it on one of these panels installed horizontally, straight up and down, 16 feet long, 4 feet tall, with the intention of keeping it pruned and keeping them going straight up. So it is work if you want to have a supply of unique. If you're doing weddings or selling to wedding people or designers, this would be a great crop that would command a high dollar.
And how do you space the plants along your tunnel?
We have been spacing them about 6 inches apart because they look so darn innocent, right? But they are quite vigorous.
They
So
are.
I would say 12 inches would probably be a better plan.
And when do you like to harvest these little pods?
Soon as the green pods that are plentiful on the stem and are before they start to turn any other color.
All right, now we're going to move on to our final one, and it's going to be spinning gourds. And this is such a popular seed. Whenever people come to the open farm and they see the spinning gourds growing, they have to have them. So they're these little gourds. They have a bottleneck sort of shape at the top, and they have a green and lighter green striped appearance. And apparently they used to be spun on tables like tops for fun, but they're just so cute. And you can also dry them and then use them as ornaments. You could paint them or something. Why do you like to grow these spinning gourds, Lisa?
My goodness, they're just so tiny and cute. I mean,
They
they're
are.
irresistible. I mean, we have a million of them everywhere right now because we didn't harvest them hardly at all last year. I mean, they're very plentiful. You don't need but one or two
Yeah.
plant. And we planted about 20 feet of our tunnel in these. And I mean, you could make earrings out of these because when they dry, they're super
Yeah.
light. Get a little tiny one, but you can paint them just like you can any gourd. There's all kinds of arts and craft things you can do with it. However, my favorite use of them is when they're fresh. They are ready Thanksgiving tables, fall tables, little bowls of these. People can't keep their hands off of them. They
Yeah.
absolutely love them, and they're easy to grow. They're great for kids. And if I remember right, they're kind of quick. And so they're really, really fun. And last year we painted some as ghosts, to use for
Yeah.
decoration. We had snowmen, we have Santa Clauses. We have done so many fun things.
You should also have these on your tunnel and you can paint some as ghosts for your trick-or-treaters
Oh,
that
there you
come.
go. There you go.
And if you're looking over on YouTube, you can see these are extremely vigorous vines and they have really big leaves. How do you like to space these along your tunnel?
I would say you kind of like the hyacinth bean. We always tend to be cut flower growers. We crowd them in, but I think 12 to 16 inches would be very sufficient for this for sure.
So you can use them fresh, like we've mentioned, which is when they have that striped green and light green sort of look. How can you dry these, Lisa? What's your process for that? And then how would you clean up some of them that show a little bit of mold as they're drying?
Sure. So we have learned that the best way for them to dry is on the vine. And they always say be sure to harvest them for the frost hits them. But I have some out there that have gone through winter and they're still dried and they're not brittle. I don't know what that harm it causes. I guess it depends on how cold your winter is too, right? So I find the most efficient way and their most aerated way is to let them dry on the vine. But so we have also harvested bunches of them before and put them on a single layer, like on a jelly roll pan, and then just set them up on top of the refrigerator or anywhere where they're out of the way. And they kind of sweat out the moisture. As you can see from this image, you can see mold and a little funky stuff growing. That's because there's moisture present when they're fresh, and it leaks out of them, and that grows stuff. And a soapy water bath and then bleach even sometimes. I mean, that's why I just find it easier to let them. This is less likely to be such a problem when they dry on the vine out in the garden, because they're little
Yeah.
and there's a bunch of them. I mean, it's a hard scrub. So you can do that, but there's lots of suggestions online on how to do that, and so many craft ideas. You could keep kids busy all winter long. I mean, first you put them on making Halloween stuff. Then you put them on making them Thanksgiving decorations. Then you
Yeah.
put them on making Christmas ornaments. I mean, there's just no end to the variety of things. You drill a little hole in the top and put a string through it to hang them on trees. I mean, it's really, that's why I love them. They're so versatile.
And then you can make your earrings also.
And you could make earrings. Saying that, and I'm just waiting for somebody to send me a pair of earrings. It hasn't happened yet.
Oh yeah, she will wear them, people, if you send them.
Yep, that's true. I haven't had earrings on in a long time, but I do have holes in my ears. But yeah, I just think that this is one of the funnest, easy to grow, involve your kids and your family. And as a flower farmer, how many of those little green gourds do you think you could sell in little bags? Display them in a pretty little bowl you have at home. I mean, they last
Yeah.
a long time fresh like that.
And they're just about 2 to 3 inches long, wouldn't you say, Lisa?
Oh yeah, they're tiny.
They're
I mean, when you
tiny.
compare them to regular gourds, I have a bowl of them usually in my house from September till Christmas easily.
And this is another one that once it starts growing over the top of this tunnel, they just
Ugh.
dangle and they're just so cute.
And when the wind blows them, like when they're
Oh,
dry, I'm telling you all, it's just this tunnel has become like an obsession. People are like, "Oh, you should plant climbing roses." And yeah, all those things would be nice, but I love changing it up. That's why I love growing annuals. You get to do something different every single year.
and I just love that the 3 we talked about today, they don't have anything to do with flowers, really.
They don't, but they all have great potential as a cash crop.
All right, well, that was it for this episode on vining plants. If you have any favorite viners that you'd like to share with us, feel free to do that over in the comment section on YouTube, or you can use the form linked in the show notes. And thanks so much again for joining us. Be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. And if you're enjoying Seed Talk, please be sure to share it with a friend. And thanks again for being here with us.
Yes, and friends, we love talking about this stuff. And we
Yeah.
appreciate every single listener and every review and every share. We just love enjoying, and we're rewarded by growing. We're just growing more and more, and we just love empowering people, especially when we talk about stuff we start from seeds, because we know a lot of people struggle with that, right,
Yeah.
Layne? I mean,
Yes.
it's just really ongoing, because I'm really a believer that every person has the natural tendency to want to start seeds. It's that it's either intimidating or you failed. And it's just, I understand I was a failure for many years. And when you just learn a few ground rules, it opens the door to grow so much stuff.
It
It's
does.
just really, really, I'm really looking forward to my retirement years when I don't have to just like focus on growing cut flowers, when there's other things that we can grow, because I mean, your quality is just superior to any transplant you can buy in the store, and the variety is endless. So thank you, Layne, for thinking up this Seed Talk podcast. It was perfect
Oh,
to suit this need.
it is my pleasure.
So friends, remember, you can learn more about us, Layne and Lisa, over at thegardenersworkshop.com. You'll find we have a full library of courses, including our newest, Cool Flowers Seed to Harvest. You will not be sorry if you purchase that course, as well as our fully stocked online garden shop that has all the same seeds that we start from here on our farm, and we would just love to hook up with you over there. So friends, till we meet again, ciao.
Bye.